What up everyone, Shark here, welcome back to the channel. So in the next few days, I've got a couple of games for you guys that are going to be good, close 1v1s, but as opposed to the kind of top 10 players, super optimized, hyper micro builds that you might see, these are going to be up and coming players who clearly understand the core mechanics of the game, but are looking for a little bit of coaching and feedback to take their game to the next level. So that's what we got here. Playing as allies, we have Ted from France running US forces. He's about 1150 ELO, and his opponent, Shawn from Germany, is about 1100 ELO with the Wehrmacht. So what I'm looking for here, I'm going to provide a little bit of constructive feedback during the cast, during the post-match review, but I'd love for you guys to throw your love into the comments for these guys as well. What did they do well? What can they work on? Because as we're all gearing up for the 2.0 update here in February, we want players to really understand and master the aspects of the game so we can have more fun, more competitive multiplayer team games here in Company of Heroes 3. So with that, I'm going to roll into the game. Looking forward to the discussion afterwards. Here we go. We got Shawn here in blue playing as a Wehrmacht, starting on the west of Faymonville, kind of downhill approach. And then opposite him is T3dg013. You know what? Let's go with Ted. Ted started with the double scout, building a barracks. Shawn obviously going infantry company and getting some grenadiers out. So is it possible that we will see some main lines instead of scout spam in this game? I think so. Honestly, the barracks for USF makes a lot of sense. Oh, we're going SSF and Weasel. All right, so this is an interesting. This is interesting here. So I'm going to blow this up real quick because the Weasel has the ability to drop a mortar. So if you want a mortar here, then and you're going to SSF and you're getting the Weasel, you don't need to build a barracks for that. So it only makes sense to build this barracks if he's going to run some rifles. But double scout and Weasel is a very, very aggressive kind of map presence build. So I think Ted will most likely have some good early game kind of map advantage, especially against the double Pyos, which have a lot of utility but don't get a capture rate boost for Wehrmacht. Shawn here locking in Mechanized, and so looks like he's largely kind of playing through the center here, whereas Ted is playing a little bit wider. This is normally the approach that you see on Faymonville, is the scouts go really wide and the combat units kind of play through the center. So MG42 out for Shawn and a rifle squad out for Ted. And now Ted going weapons support center. And I wonder if this is maybe a little bit of like analysis paralysis. Like he hasn't 100% decided how he wants to approach this. The Weasel doesn't have the machine gun yet either, so it is actually taking a fair amount of damage from the Pioneers. Rifles and Gren's trading shots in the center, and you can see Shawn trying to walk these rifles into this machine gun. Would like to see the machine gun set up, although having it move into position, yeah, not bad, because now it's going to set up and center the rifles in the arc. Yeah, they just immediately retreat, so smart play there from Ted. Doesn't want to drop any models. Now when the Weasel gets Vet 1, which it could do relatively soon, it can get set up the healing station. So then he won't need to tech early healing. Pioneers face off against scouts. A smart play here, throw the scouts in the building. The Pioneers, unless they tech a flamethrower, are not really much of a threat there. Now interestingly, Ted going for the Browning 30 cal machine gun. So only one rifle squad. Wow, MG42 doing a ton of damage. Big burst onto the Weasel. Ted floating a fair number of munitions. He could upgrade the machine gun on the Weasel there. And Shawn immediately going to Luftwaffe company. And actually, like, if you look at this map control, he's done a fantastic job. He's got 3 of the fuel points, good central control, contesting the VPs. So definitely good start for the Wehrmacht here. Yeah, I feel like Ted is just not sure how he wants to play this. Now he's going for an engineer. And if that's just to repair the Weasel, it's not really necessary. The Weasel will repair itself, so as long as you keep it out of combat. Oh, Gren's run into the Browning. They immediately retreat as well. And the scouts here force off the Pios, but not after Shawn caps up this VP. And now Shawn building what I assume is going to be a med bunker in the headquarters. If you have the early manpower for Ver, and it looks like he does, as well as the munitions, it's a smart choice. Definitely better than the healing upgrade, which not only costs you fuel, but doesn't provide the casualty plank. Wow. Gren's just sniping these rifle models over here. Yeah, and now Ted going for the infirmary, the med station, his own headquarters. Now, Shawn is getting the tier 2 officers' quarters out now. And I think, you know, he means to play really heavily into tier 2. The problem with this is he doesn't have any of those units on the field. So it costs him some fuel, it costs him some manpower, and really it's just the time. He's done such a good job with the resources here, getting an advantage over Ted, that he should get a couple of these higher strength combat units out, whether it's the 221, whether it's the Jaegers, to continue to play his advantage. Yeah, here he goes for the 221, and it's just delayed somewhat unnecessarily. The scout's not able to get the decap off on the munitions point, and they're going to take a couple of casualties on retreat. Now mortar coming in, and it looks like he did the mortar drop from the Weasel. So the mortar forces off. Oh no, he's smoking so he can capture the middle. I got my colors backwards there for a second. Weasel still with no MG upgrade. He's not really accomplishing a whole lot without that. Oh. Wow, it's so funny. The smoke's so aggressive that the MG42 actually able to suppress engineers on the backside of it. Mortar rounds coming in though, really shredding this MG42. It's going to relocate. Yeah, it needs to retreat. 221 here to challenge these scouts trying to capture the cutoff. They will be successful in decapping. Shawn's got enough for the raid package, which will allow that 221 to contest territory. So if he upgraded that from his battle group, the 221 would have been able to stop the decap. Looks like Ted is going to go for the mechanized support center here. And honestly, not great engagements for either side. The scout gets away. 221 definitely could have pursued there. Would have been a nice pickup for Shawn. Weasel's going to start countercapping, but even with that cutoff, the resource is still relatively even. Now you've got the 221 capping this fuel. Weasel could easily countercap the Shawn's fuel on the opposite side. Now we're going to see the first squad of Jaegers out. Mechanized support center has been teched. He's got the weapon support center, so we could see a half track. He actually has the resources for it right now. If he wants to play kind of that US half track based meta.
All-purpose mines. There, and there.
Interesting mine placement here from Ted.
Capture complete, sir.
I mean, it could make sense if you're trying to hold off pursuit, right? So Shawn starts to push through this spot. 221's gonna bleed this mortar a little bit. 1919 on the flank, and the rifleman could get a snare off here. Instead, they're gonna focus on the fuel point. Now the MG and the mortar forced to retreat. 221 kind of rotating away. I think he's just on capture orders is what it looks like. Fortunately, the Jaegers arrived to force off the rifles. Oh, a Gren squad. Oh, he's swapping the Grens for Jaegers. I was like, Grenadier squad killed. I must have missed that. And both players kind of trading sides of the map here. You see Ted taking the north side and then Shawn grabbing the south side. I wonder what upgrades we're going to see on the Jaegers. Now that Ted is going for the motor pool, might make sense for the Jaegers to pop some Panzerschrecks to hold off, prevent like a dive from a Greyhound or a Chaffee. Mortars hitting the MG42 in the center, so good mortar play from Ted. Grenadiers actually not faring very well in this fight. The Engineers good close range damage. A couple of Grenadier models dropped him with the Scouts on the flank. That's pretty painful. Now Jaegers on the flank here, and they force a mass retreat. the Jaeger squad on the opposite side of the map has teched these Panzerschrecks, and he's using them to cap, and I would really prefer if you were to keep the Jaegers in the center and let the Pioneers handle the capping tasks. I think that's been the biggest thing I've noticed with Shawn so far, is he's very focused on map control, but because of the way he's approaching it, he's using his combat units to cap, and so he's not keeping them involved, applying pressure to the enemy. He's floating quite a few resources here. Could go tier 4 almost immediately. Could get a mortar out from his tier 1 to help deal with this 1919 in the middle. Squad of SSF commandos on the field here, as well as an AT gun coming out from the motor pool. The AT gun feels a little bit like an overreaction from Ted to the 221. I'd almost rather see him, if that's all he... Oh. Shrek annihilates the Weasel. Third squad of Jaegers on the field now for Shawn. So he's going to play heavily into this tier 2 build. Oh, that 221's got to get out of there. It holds fire, but a little bit of pathing, a little bit of late micro, and the commandos will get the kill onto the 221. Also worth noting, they had the flare set up for extra vision, but also the additional accuracy. Oh, Satchel in on this MG42. Oh, it doesn't react at all. And that MG42 is cleared. Engineers think about picking it up. This could be dangerous with the Grens right here. Oh, good grenade. If they focus down the solo, and they do, so they trade the engineer for the MG42. But either way, that MG42 is going to be really helpful for Ted as he deals with these Jaegers. Jaegers with Shreks against this one rifle squad. Yeah, and they're going to force away the rifles there, especially with the veterancy, the tier officers quarters veterancy that they have. Now, yeah, that's an engagement they're not going to win. Commandos, while already vet 1, as commandos vet up, they're going to become very, very difficult for the Jaegers to deal with. There's a Chaffee on the way, and I'm confused why Ted is investing so heavily into anti-vehicle. He's got a Chaffee, he's got an AT gun out, and with the death of the 221, Shawn has no vehicles for him to really worry about. Pioneer squad caught out in the open here. Gonna get gunned down by the scouts of MG. Jaeger squad on the flank. That mortar's just gonna immediately retreat before they bleed too much. MG is set up to cover. Oh, the stolen MG42. Well, short first burst, and the Jaeger's able to continue to advance. Now they're suppressed. Now comes the Jaeger squad up with a recon package. Oh man, that scout. Wow, the smoke drop on retreat saves that scout squad, excuse me. Jaegers with Shreks on the opposite side. Already double vet. Yeah, they should probably set up here, maybe throw a hold fire on, make use of that ambush camouflage to try to catch this Chaffee out of position. Gren's capping on the flank. They're forced away by the machine gun. So good use of the 2 machine guns here from Ted to kind of... Oh, good push on the Chaffee. Outside the machine gun's arc. It's going to reface. Oh, see, he needs prioritized vehicles on these Jaegers, which will keep the Shrek from shooting at infantry. Wow, good push here through the middle to force MG42 to retreat. But Ted, meanwhile, countercapping hard on the south side of the map. And so Shawn, he owns the center, but he's going to start to lose on resources here. His little Jaeger platoon forces the rifles to retreat. Yeah, and the mortar, not really dropping models, but doing a fair amount of damage to the Jaegers. So if they don't get back and heal at some point, they could start to drop. Yeah, Ted, I like how Ted is setting up his MG and not just moving it around the map. Even more important now with AT guns, with the increased setup time, to make sure that they get not just one but two shots off before a vehicle is able to drive away. Oh, but Jaegers here avoid the arc, get a couple of shots off. Now the machine gun refaces, they're at max range, so they... Oh, but they're out of sight. Well played. Well, ambush bonus onto the machine gun. Wow, whittles down. Loses 2 models almost immediately. Jaeger's suppressed, but still doing some damage. They clear the machine gun. They've got to be careful. Mortar comes in. The rifles, instead of focusing down the Jaeger squad, are going to focus on picking up this MG42.
Enemy forces have captured a victory point.
And the Chaffee over here on the side looking for work, but until this Brumbear hits the field, not much for it to do. And I'm really interested in how the Chaffee will be able to handle the Brumbear, especially with the Jaeger Shreks available. Jaeger's finally going to get some healing here in HQ. It's worth noting, when you reinforce after the changes, you want to, your reinforcement will happen much faster when you're within about 40 range of the HQ. So I know a lot of people like to put their base buildings further out here so you can kind of reinforce and heal on the way out. And that still works, but the reinforcement will be slower if you're too far away from the headquarters, so keep that in mind. Brumbear hits the field, and this should be a huge power spike if used appropriately. Meanwhile, Ted's got his second squad of commandos out. He doesn't have the improved rockets yet for the bazookas, which they will definitely need against the Brumbear. Pioneers and engineers squaring off on the flank. Chaffee gets one good hit in on the Brumbear. Now, next shot bounces on the frontal armor, as you'd expect. Yeah, these Jaegers capturing on the flank, that is a huge waste of combat time. You want to keep your combat units not like necessarily clumped up together in the middle, but you don't want them out on the flank capturing resource points. They need to be here in the center where they can fight with these commandos who now, without a machine gun, these commandos can, oh my goodness. And that commando squad, what a pickup for Shawn. Bazooka goes on to the Pioneers. Wow, that hit from the Brumbear was huge.
The enemy has taken a victory point.
Pioneers forced away by engineers on the flank. And interestingly enough, we're going to see another Jaeger recon package get built. So Shawn, despite the Brumbear, despite multiple Jaegers in the field, still worried about the infantry that Ted can put out. Jaeger's smoke comes in to allow the Grenadiers to capture this VP, although they need to get into the smoke. Chaffee takes another shot that bounces. Oh my god, huge damage onto the machine gun. AT gun penetrates the Brumbear from the front, but now, with that machine gun retreated, these Jaegers will be able to advance without fear. Good focus fire onto the AT gun, forcing it back, and then Jaegers on the flank trying to re-grab this fuel. And I like that he's keeping the Grenadiers here with the Jaegers, so he has the availability to heal or merge.
The enemy have taken our territory.
And I like this approach from Shawn in that he knows he needs the center, and he's kind of focused on one side or the other, not trying to spread out and do too much. Now, another SSF squad on the field. And here comes the Chaffee, immediately takes a shot from the Shrek. Oh, and we're also going to see the Stug D call in with the Stas Troopin. There's so much anti-infantry firepower. Multiple bazooka salvos. Brumbear's frontal armor is protecting it somewhat from the Zooks and the AT gun, but he's smartly going to get out. Now Stug D is going to clear this MG out of the building. Yeah, it immediately retreats. Now, again, I like that the Gren is staying with the Jaegers, but I would prefer to see the Gren and the Pioneers do all this capping on the sides. Let the Stas Troopin and the Jaegers work together in the middle. Oh, we're going to see the ambush STG-44 package on these Stas Troopin. So I like that. Now, Ted, teching grenades, he's only got the one rifle squad. So that's an interesting use of fuel, although 207 fuel. Never mind. Fuel is not his problem. He really needs tier 4, the Mechanized Support Center.
That's enemy fire! On us!
This SSF and rifle section over here, pinned between Brumbear and lots of airlight infantry. The Jaegers take a ton of damage. Haven't dropped any. There we go. They finally dropped a couple of models. They're going to retreat. Nice red phosphorus grenade from the Stas troop and forces away one commando squad. This Stug D's got to get into the action though. These STGs do so much damage against the unvetted. Nice grenade. Drops one Stas. Oh man, Stas already hit Vet 1. The STG-44s, the combination, and then the SSF commandos, they got a health nerf in the latest patch, so at Vet 0, only 100 health, they will drop models. Which honestly doesn't change their DPS a ton if you have the Johnny guns out, because those will always stay on, the heavy weapons stay on the last 2 models. Now, Brumbear and Stug D together, they could easily push this position. But I think Shawn wisely waiting until his infantry are healed back up. Ted using the scouts here to kind of cap on the flank. Yeah, this is smart, and they decap so fast. Motor pool. Yeah, it really needs the tank depot, I think, for Ted. Jaegers, yeah, they'll win this fight against the scouts. But they really need, yeah, there's the smoke. I like it. Well done. Stug D rolling over to support.
Research underway, Commandant.
Now, Stug D's got to be careful. A Chaffee on the flank here could catch out of position. Jaeger's focusing the machine gun, but with the 30% damage reduction, not doing a ton damage. Oh, the Stug immediately pops smoke and attacks ground. Oh no, I'm sorry. That was the Jaeger smoke. Oh, now here comes 2 SSF squads with the Zooks out. Now the Stug pops at smoke, breaks line of sight. A couple shots off, but a handful of them bounce. Brumbear and a Jaeger squad are going to shove their way through the center here. But this Stug, he's dancing around this sight blocker. He's got to find a way to get it out here. The Chaffee could easily challenge this. The Stas don't have a snare. And then with the SSF, who ironically come into the middle, maybe they're hoping to catch the Brumbear out of position. Looks like a missed opportunity for Ted to potentially knock out this Stug D. Still no improvised, or not improvised, improved rockets. Oh, good hits onto the rear. And now the anti-infantry loiter coming in. Wow, M1AT gun cleared and stolen by Shawn. The Brumbear triggers Shatter Will. The strafe is going to force the Grens away. Nice smoke from the Jaegers. Prevent that one commando squad from getting a shot off. Oh, those scouts. Oh. Gun down as well. Man, the Brumbear hits really hard. And this is really weird. The positioning of this Chaffee, pretty unusual. He's got to be careful of this AT gun. And it looks like he's going to get it out by heading to the south here. Oh, wow. Big push here. MG, mortar, engineers, and riflemen force the Stas trooping away. Shawn floating a ton of manpower. And at this point, you got to wonder... I mean, with the vehicles that are on the field for Ted, which is basically a Chaffee, if another Jaeger squad with a Shrek might not be a decent option here. Oh, first shot from the stolen AT gun just dirts. There we go. There's a hit onto the Chaffee. If it doesn't get out, one more hit. Oh, it just barely survives. Now the commando is focusing on that stolen AT gun. Oh, and they just switched to their Johnny guns, so they won't be able to switch to bazookas anytime soon. They're forced to retreat. Brumbear moved all the way up. I've had some interesting excursions here from some of these American infantry. The Jaegers just retreat in the face of the grenade, even though they don't end up dropping a model. Stug D in the base in need of repairs. Stostruppen kind of idling back here. But again, Shawn with the good VP pressure, right? He's got the north VP, and he's been able to hold on to the center pretty consistently. He's still floating a ton of manpower, and now with a P4 coming out. And he's only kind of, you can say he's kind of short on fuel, but he's been making use of it. Maybe a cache onto this fuel point, so we can get some of the tech upgrades. Maybe another Stostruppen squad, just to continue to scale against these SSF.
The enemy has 200 points.
Yeah, as the SSF vet up, they become very, very scary. So if you look at their veterancy, Vet 2, plus 30 weapon accuracy, plus 20% rate of fire, which is really helpful. And then at Vet 3, plus 20 health, which they really need, and plus 10% movement speed in addition to rate of fire buff. So they're very strong as they vet up, which really requires you to counter with other elite infantry of your own, or to get this Brumbear its additional veterancy, because it gets additional armor at Vet 2 and additional health at Vet 3. Panzer 4 moved up. Now Shawn, he's got the south side VP here. The north being capped by the machine gun. Yeah, losing that MG42 has been kind of a pain for him. Sticky under the P4, it'll shock the crew, but not create a permanent crit. Yeah, it really needs these Shrek Jaegers to be on prioritized vehicles so they don't keep wasting their Shrek shots onto infantry. Now a Hellcat on the field for Ted. The Hellcat and the Chaffee and all of these bazooka squads, he could really, I think if he catches some of these vehicles out, could really challenge them. Well, Engineer's barely going to get away. They decap the center. The 57mm AT gun is going to get another hit off here on the Chaffee. Well, P4 whiffs, but could have knocked out the Chaffee there. Hellcat doing good damage. Oh, the Zook shots wasted on the Jaegers, unfortunately. And so the P4 will get out of there. Yeah, if I'm Ted, you really need those improved rockets. If you're gonna, especially if you're gonna rely on SSF to try to counter these vehicles, because they don't get a penetration buff throughout their veterancy. So the only real way to boost their anti-vehicle performance is by upgrading the rockets. Now another anti-infantry loiter coming in. Now Brumbear taking a bunch of hits from the Hellcat. Now the P4 joins in. Chaffee shot bounces. SSF taking some bazooka shots, but the P4 wisely pops smoke and backs out. These Pioneers, let's say, what are they targeting? You know, the icon says they're targeting the Pios. It looked like the strafe came in on the riflemen. Oh, you got to use these Grens to merge here with the Jaegers. Could have kept them on the field with the additional damage output. Grenade coming in, but it's going to whiff. Oh, now a flak 30 on the field for Shawn. Oh, maybe that's just an answer to this loiter. Oh, that AT gun took a couple of strafes, but didn't drop any models, so no closer to getting it cleared. And now with two healed vehicles, it looks like Ted is going to push the center here. Shawn's got him on the triple cap, though. And this is a really dangerous situation. If they maintains the triple cap, it's less than a minute before this game will be over. And Chaffee and Hellcat, not the right answer for these Jaegers, and the stolen 57 mil going to continue to plink away at the Chaffee. Basically gets 2 free hits every time. And because of that, Chaffee's back off for repairs. Ted was able to decap the center, but the Jaegers are going to recapture it here almost immediately. He's got an MG and some SSF commandos moving. Oh, cheeky demolition charge planted here on this building. But he's got to get on these victory points. At 33 tickets left. Oh man, look at the KD for Shawn. Almost 2 to 1. Stoss trooping grenade. Good grenade throw. Oh my gosh. Just one SSF model left, retreating through the red phosphorus, or is that the white phosphorus? And the Stoss pick him up. Ted's going to throw the GG. And I think that is going to be it here. I guess he's going to let it burn all the way out. Yeah, the engineers are going to try to contest this middle VP. Take a big salvo. Brumbear may go down to the Hellcat here at the very end. Engineers succeed in getting the decap, so this... Oh, they die for it. Oh, Hellcat gets the Stug D. And attack round through the hedgerow. Wow, look at the arc on that shot. Hellcat just a sliver of health left. What is the Hellcat? Attack round misses. The P4 is going to get it. Jaegers here going to capture this VP, and that's going to be the game. Alright, so I'm going to start here with Shawn's build order as a Wehrmacht. And I think he had a very clear idea of kind of what he wanted to do and how he wanted to play. Double Pioneers into Infantry Company, essentially 2 Grenadiers and MG42, chooses the Mechanized Battlegroup. My biggest complaint with this is he doesn't necessarily make full use of some of the capabilities of the Mechanized Battlegroup, so we'll get into that a little bit. He goes tier 2 for the Luftwaffe Company, medical bunker in the headquarters. Great choice. He's floating a little bit of manpower and munitions early on. I love this. This is a smart play. Tier 2 officers' quarters. It's good considering how much he plays with tier 2 units, but the timing is a little bit off. He doesn't have anything onto the field, and it actually delays the power spike that he could have gotten from that excellent fuel control from getting his tier 2 out a little bit ahead of schedule. From there, it's a 221 scout car and 3 Jaeger squads, one of which is a conversion from the Grenadiers. His Jaegers, he gets Recce package on 2 of them and the Panzerschreck on 1 of them. And so my only complaint with this is if he knows he's going mechanized and he knows he's going to go for the Stug Assault Group call-in, which comes with Stoss Troopin', which he does later, I think he would have been better served to get a second Schreck and then leave the Panzer or 1 squad of the Jaegers with the Recce package, or maybe go all 3 with Schrecks. And the reason here is that the Jaegers, especially against the kind of infantry that Ted is fielding, don't lose a ton of their anti-infantry firepower when you give them the Panzerschreck. But if you are worried about the light vehicle build, the motor pool, the half track, the Schrecks give you a lot of versatility and they do a lot of damage. So something to think about in the future. From there, he goes Panzer Company, gets a Brumbear out first, and then a Stug Assault Group. So that's the Stug D and the Stoss Troopin'. A lot of anti-infantry firepower there. From there, he goes for the Panzer IV. And this is, it works out for him because there's a good multi-role element. I think in this case, you've got enough anti-infantry on the field that you might be better served by teching the Panther production and getting some hard AT. Just in case, right? This is one of those things, like at this point in the game, there's been enough fuel, and actually Ted's floating a ton of fuel, that he could potentially have to worry about Hellcats, Shermans, a bulldozer, right? And the Brumbear and the Stug D are not the answer to those. The stolen M1 AT gun, not the answer to those. So that's why I think the Panther probably a better choice going into the late game. Then he does take the side skirts and the tier 4 officers' quarters, which I really like. He's pretty much pop capped, so he's floating some resources. Those are good choices to make in the late game to increase the durability and the capability of your units. Should always do that, especially if you're pop capped. And then a flak 30 at the end of the game makes a lot of sense particularly because he's using it to knock down that anti-infantry loiter. It's more of like responding to the harassment from the US side, but I like the thought, and he's got enough pop space to use it. Now, if he had the micro, he could move it into, say, use it to lock down one VP, and then when he sees the loiter pop, he goes over to it and triggers the anti-air stance. But either way, it's a good choice at the end of the game. Looking at his battle group use, so he gets the raid package. He uses that to allow the 221 to cap. That's smart. It also includes the smoke for the vehicle, so good choice there. Stug D, Assault Group, great choice, especially in the current meta. The Stas Trooping allows you to get Stas usually out a little bit earlier, although in this case he already had tier 4 up. He doesn't select either Panther. Now, if you have the CPs for it, the Panther call-in is better because it arrives immediately, and if something happens to your Panzer Company building and gets destroyed, you can still call it in. But the Panzer production obviously comes 7 CPs sooner, so keep that in mind. On the opposite side, the light vehicle repairs. This would have been great if his 221 had been kept alive. Unfortunately, it gets knocked out relatively early, so nothing there. The STG package on the Stas, I understand it. It is a good package, especially because you get the ambush camouflage and that bonus. However, the current meta, the Vespa, is crazy good. And on this map, because it's so shallow, the Vespa would have been absolutely killer in dealing with some of those US team weapons. Then finally at the end, he gets the zeroing artillery. I actually kind of disagree with this choice at this point. He's got a bunch of vehicles on the field at varying states of health. I think the Mechanized Advance would have been a lot better because at least you get the vehicle healing across the field, and it gives a buff to your nearby infantry. So you could have used that to kind of really aggressively close out the game. And now as we go over Ted's build order, what I want to kind of highlight is it's a little all over the place. And that lack of sense of direction kind of costs him. I think there's some kind of weird and wasted choices in this build, which isn't to say that you shouldn't try a variety of units, but some of the decisions don't make a whole lot of sense to me. So if you've got a better comprehension of like what he's trying here, please hit us up in the comments. But I'm just going to kind of walk through like my thoughts as he goes through this. So first off, 2 scouts in a special operations battle group, and then the M29 Weasel. Great opening. The Weasel plus the 2 scouts, tons of capping power, which we've seen work really well on this map with how wide it is. From there, he goes barracks, and I almost wonder if this is like a misclick, because with how good the weapon support center is right now, and the fact that you get SSF commandos, granted a couple of CPs, but you get access to them in this game. There's no reason. Well, plus with the Weasel, you can drop machine guns, you can drop mortars. So the barracks is, I feel like, is a little bit superfluous. The single rifle squad doesn't really accomplish a whole lot with the exception of a couple of snares late in the game. And then he almost immediately builds, it's like he acknowledges this is an issue, builds a weapon support center, then builds an M1919 team, which again, you could drop it from the Weasel if you wanted it. And that's it. That's all that comes out from the weapon support center. So some kind of like weird choices here. You got to use the abilities of the Weasel. Speaking of which, like he doesn't upgrade the machine gun on it, so it's basically a Kettenkrad at that point, which is, it's fine, but it helps to have that offensive firepower to kind of push Pioneers away, maintain map presence. The M1919 he does use really, really well. When he steals MG42, he uses that well as well. It gets engineers out for some minesweeping and repairs. Turns out to not really be that much of an issue. Then he goes med station. This is smart, right? Because the med station for the US comes with casualty clearing, so super helpful. Drops a mortar from the Weasel. So he could have built a mortar team. He gets a mortar team anyway. Works out for him. It is good in helping him deal with MG42 until he's able to steal it. So good choice there. And actually, especially against Jaegers, because they're more of a fight from cover style unit, the mortar is really helpful in chunking down their health and knocking down models. Then he goes Mechanized Support Center, which in theory, like I really like that support center paired with the SSF battle group, but he doesn't use any of the upgrades from it. So you'll kind of see as we get into the tech later. Then he goes Motor Pool. He calls in his first squad of commandos. From the Motor Pool, he gets an AT gun and an M24 Chaffee. This is a lot of investment into AT, and he hasn't really seen any vehicles other than the 221 on the field at this point. Then he takes a grenade package, which is questionable just because he only has the 1 rifle squad on the field. I would rather spend I know it's more expensive, but I'd rather spend that manpower and that fuel on the improved rockets. If you're going to play with commandos, they get the upgraded bazookas at that point, do a lot of damage to the Axis vehicles if you're worried about that. He gets 2 more squads of commandos. One of them gets knocked out almost immediately by the Brumbear, unfortunately. Gets another engineer squad. And then towards the end there, he gets a tank depot. Finally gets that out. He's floating a ton of fuel. Gets a Hellcat. It's not enough to help him turn the tide of this game. From the battle group, obviously the Weasel, the 0 CP Weasel without the pack howitzer, the anti-infantry loiter, doesn't choose a whiz-bang. Honestly, I don't think it would have had a huge impact on this game with kind of the way it was going, even though I love the whiz-bang. All right, the flares, these are super, super powerful, not just for the sight, but because they provide the accuracy bonus for infantry units. So really big fan of those. SSF commandos, and then assault operation, really helpful, especially late game when you're down on VPs, to help you kind of capture back really quickly and turn and kind of save yourself some time and some tickets. So good choices there from the battle group. Just a little bit of a wonky build from like the vanilla USF side of the house. All right, so now for some general takeaways. And again, the goal is to identify things that these players did either well or that they could have improved to kind of help us all get better at our gameplay and things to think about in 1v1s and 2v2s going forward. So first off, you don't necessarily have to have the most like world's optimized build, right? You don't need to follow like a Havoc or an Orange Pest or a Farragy build, line by line. But you should have a general idea of like how you want to play. And sometimes a misclick can be like a little like happy accident, right, Bob Ross? That forces you to play a certain style. So like, let's say you end up building the barracks by accident and you're not ready for it. Okay, that's fine. It's 10 fuel, 150 manpower, 10 fuel. Like, if you don't want it, if you don't want to build a rifle squad from it, then don't. That's it. All right, silly, like mistake, but move on from it. If you want to play with the weapon support center, like do that. But I think the whole point is like, if you're going to, especially if you're going to select a battle group early, you want to have an idea of how you want to play it. And Ted clearly knew initially, I want to play 2 scouts and a weasel. I want a lot of map presence. Okay, cool. And then it was like the 3 to 7 minute mark where he wasn't really sure what to do with it from there. So keep that in mind. Whereas, Shawn really knew, I want to get a couple of Gren squads out. I want to get an MG42 and I want to get in tier 2 as fast as possible. I want to flood the field with Jaegers because they're multi-role. I can give them Shreks. I can give them G43s. I can do what I need to do. And so, and carry that into kind of the late game, the Brumbear, the Stug D, right? So his order made sense. And he basically said, I'm going to give up overall map presence in exchange for overwhelming centralized combat power, right? And so if both units threw everything they had into the center, the Vera build would have won. So the USF counter is to spread it out as much as possible and try to win isolated engagements. You can try, there are a million different strategies that are viable in this game. Not everything has to be like perfectly Six Sigma optimized, but have an idea of what your strategy is going to be before the game starts. If you need help with stuff like this, like I published the build orders for this reason, so you can see what the best players do, how they think about the game, what choices they make. If you need more of that, I actually would recommend Stefan JF. He plays and talks through his thought process while he's playing. I don't understand how he does it. He's like a top 50 player and he's got like the extra folds in his brain that he can just talk about stuff constantly while he's playing, but he's really good at explaining his thought process. So if you haven't seen his videos, I will post a link down to his channel in the description below. Check those out. Okay, sorry. The next thing, over-investing early into AT can put you behind. This is a trap either way. If you get caught without an AT gun and the enemy rolls out with a bunch of vehicles or a strong vehicle early, normally you see this when you play against the Brits. They get a Humber really quick and you're just unprepared for it. That can be bad. But building a Chaffee and an AT gun when the enemy doesn't have any vehicles on the field is also bad. That's a lot of, that's like 550 manpower and 70 fuel, plus the cost of the motor pool that you've invested into dealing with enemy vehicles and there are no vehicles on the field. And then if you really want to get into it, when the Brumbear hits the field, those are the wrong counters to the Brumbear. So be careful about your anti-tank choices, and be very deliberate about when you get them out. On the other hand, for Shawn, right? So late in the game, he actually started to need some AT. When the Hellcat hits the field, the potential for a Sherman to hit the field or a bulldozer, and all of his vehicles are very anti-infantry focused. He's got the Luftwaffe company. That's when I'd recommend looking at a Martyr, something that from range can just chunk down the US vehicles and force them to think twice before they dive. We talked about this a little bit with the Weasel, but understanding your unit's capabilities and maximizing them is really, really important, right? So getting the machine gun up on the Weasel, I know some people like to save munitions early. It's 30 munitions for that machine gun, and now you're going to win anytime you run into Pioneers. You can kite Grenadiers, or you can get on flank and kite an MG42 from range. The Weasel becomes so much more useful when it has that machine gun. Plus, it can drop a machine gun, a 1919 HMG, and it can drop a mortar in your base sector. So if you want to play WSC, but you want a mortar and you've got the Weasel, just drop the mortar, right? Like he did. But he had also built the barracks. So use that. It's just kind of like a microcosm, but that's an example of how to best kind of use some of your unit's varying capabilities. On Shawn's side, with the 221, he could have used it to keep the scouts from capping his cutoff, but he hadn't activated the 2CP raid package, which would allow him to capture territory with that vehicle, right? And then as soon as he did, he started using it for capping. But just keep that in mind, right? The best players really know what their units are capable of and use everything in a very synergistic way. In general, and like Faymonville is a great map for this, your utility and your recon units are for capping the flanks, and your combat units, especially your elite units, you want to keep in a position that's more focused on combat advantage rather than resource advantage, right? So keeping your Jaegers, especially the ones with Shreks, in a position where they can threaten enemy vehicles trying to chase your squads, chase them down and retreat, cross back and forth across the map, etc. And your combat units, especially in a 1v1, right? Almost anytime you get a 2v1 on the enemy, you're going to win that engagement. So if you can keep your units, your primary combat units closer together, you're more likely to win. If you think about like playing zone defense in sports, right? A lot of times teams will practice by essentially tying themselves together so that as one player moves, the other player moves with it. It's the same thing. Keep your units close enough, your combat units close enough that they can support each other, but that they're not so close that one MG suppresses them all, and you're controlling a critically important part of the map from a tactical perspective, and that's the best way to approach it, in my opinion. Again, I'm not like a top 10 level player, but I think I understand conceptually, having watched and casted some of these games, how the best players manage to control the middle or the key tactical areas of the map. And then finally, keep your units employed. This is a little bit of a hit on Shawn. He had 2 Pioneers in the late game. They weren't doing as much as they could have. He had a lot of munitions. I would have loved to see him invest those munitions in mines kind of across the map. Now, on one hand, not a ton of vehicles from Ted, so you're not necessarily looking to knock out vehicles with those mines, but a lot of times he'd get hit with a big flank, like a big infantry push on one side of the map. It can really blunt a push if an SSF commando squad is kind of rolling through a lane, hits a mine, loses 2 models, is immediately suppressed. Like you're just stopping that thing before it builds momentum, and that'll give you some breathing room and some time to react and reposition your own forces. The same thing with throwing down sandbags, throwing down wire on green cover. It's one of those things where like initially like, man, that takes so much APM. But if you think about trying it in certain games, especially games where you've got a little bit of an advantage and you're like, okay, I'm winning this, let me try out a few things. That's the first thing I would go to and say, get your engineers out, doing engineer stuff, and it'll become second nature and more intuitive for you. Finally, just Faymonville, some notes on this map. So it's very wide, lots of munitions around the extreme flanks of the map, which makes it really good for scouts and light vehicles that can cap, right? The shallow map also makes it really good for artillery. I really wish Shawn would have gone for the Vespa instead of the STG upgrade for the Stas troop, and the Vespa would have done work on this map. He could probably leave it in his base and bombard everything he needed to. Lots of crossing routes and shot blockers can make mines really powerful. There are lots of like little clumps of trees that channelize infantry and vehicle play in certain kind of like predictable routes, especially as they move laterally to try to fight back and forth. So mines on those routes can be super effective. And then the retreat paths from the flank can be very long. So if you've got good light vehicle play, if you've got a 221, if you got an 8-rod out, something that's really mobile, or a half track or a Greyhound on the US side, and you catch a unit out on the flank trying to cap those muni points, that's a really good opportunity to run them down and really punish your enemy for overextending. Okay, that is all that I have for this one. I hope this was helpful. Again, please, if you've got other thoughts or things that I missed, please throw them in the comments. I'm going to do a few more of these throughout the rest of the holidays. So please keep sending the replays in. Love highlighting this play. GG to both Ted and to Shawn. And that's going to do it. We'll see y'all in the next one.